We're getting some welcome rain today, but California's drought still spells trouble for everyone. We are ripping out perfectly good, very green, thirsty lawns, replacing them with native plants. Millions of trees are dying in San Diego and all across the state, and firefighters are preparing for the worst. I'm Mark Sauer. Our special edition of the Roundtable, The Impact of California's Mega Drought, starts now. Welcome to our special discussion of the California drought. I'm Mark Sauer. And joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today are Chris Genuine, editor and publisher of the TimesOfSanDiego.com. Hi, Chris.
Great to be here.
Good to see you back. Tony Perry, San Diego bureau chief for the Los Angeles Times. Hi, Tony.
Mark.
And KPBS Enterprise reporter Claire Tregeser. Good to see you, Claire.
Hi, Mark.
Well, 4 years into a severe drought, Governor Jerry Brown and other state and local leaders got serious. Brown ordered a 25% cutback in water use with a set of restrictions backed by the threat of fines. Here's his announcement in April.
We're in an historic drought, and that demands unprecedented action. It's for that reason that I'm issuing an executive order mandating substantial water reduction across our state. As Californians, we have to pull together and save water in every way we can. This executive order, which I've signed today, it's long, it covers a number of different details. In fact, I've never seen one quite like it before. It's going to save water by mandating real reductions in a number of areas. It's going to affect golf courses, people's lawns, universities, campuses, all sorts of institutions.
And I should note that the governor was standing in a field in the Sierras normally covered with snow this time of year. So, Chris, he got serious. They sounds very urgent there. What happened in the last few months we haven't seen in the last 3 years?
Well, I think it's the accumulation of all of that time. We're now 4 years into this record drought, and it's not getting any better. There was a hoped-for increase in rain because of a minor El Nino in the Pacific. That didn't happen.
Last year, that didn't happen.
Didn't happen. And I think Governor Brown is focusing on getting serious about the problem in California because it's not getting any easier.
Okay, and these new mandatory restrictions, how are they going to impact us generally?
It's 25% across the board. What it'll mean in San Diego is that individual agencies will have to cut between 12% and 36%. San Diego, which is far and away the biggest, is only 16% because of conservation efforts that have been done. And we saw the first step in this yesterday when the San Diego County Water Authority voted to require every agency to cut outside water use to 2 days a week.
Okay, and you're going to have golf courses are going to cut back, cemeteries, college campuses, a lot of public places, medians and these embankments. They're going to try and cut back water use on all of these places. And again, why not 25%, as the governor said here in San Diego?
It's not 25% across the board because different agencies over the last number of years have had differing amounts of success with conservation. San Diego really is a star in this because our water use here is averaging 63 gallons per person, which is considerably lower than the average across the state. So we're only targeted with 16%. So I think the impact in San Diego is we're going to see our lawns get a little bit more brown, but it's not going to be a dramatic impact.
All right, and some places, though, you mentioned the water use here, like Palm Springs and Rancho Santa Fe are multiples of that 63 gallons, 3-4 times that. So they're going to have to cut drastically because they haven't done so well.
Much higher cuts relatively, but you have to remember that the averages are also based on how much land. Rancho Santa Fe is an area with sprawling households, farms in some cases, big lots. So it's a much higher use. It's over 300 gallons per person. There are going to have to be cutbacks there, but the bulk of the cutbacks really are going to be felt in a place like San Diego. Small amounts, but large numbers of people.
All right. Have we got any teeth behind this? Is there anything to back it up here, Tony?
Well, that's what they're searching for. They're talking about fines and water cops and such. I want to see how that works. Mostly it's going to be voluntary. San Diegans certainly rally whenever they're asked to do something if it doesn't seem terribly onerous. So we've yet to see a real heavy use of fines. various districts in Los Angeles, for example, they've run around for a long time looking for water wasters and people thinking on their neighbors and things. Very few fines. You can't fine your way into a large percentage cut. So we're really in untested territory here.
So it's really, Claire?
Well, I thought it was interesting. The Water Authority yesterday, they did say we're cutting back to outside watering sprinklers 2 days a week, but they didn't say what days people have to do that. So there's really no way to enforce that, because unless you're saying odd numbers can water on this day, if you see someone watering, they can say, oh yeah, this is my first time this week. You know, there's no way to tell whether they're supposed to be watering or not.
And there was controversy over that. The city of San Diego felt that there had to be specific days, and I think you'll see specific days set by the city of San Diego. The smaller authorities wanted that flexibility. They said their systems couldn't handle the same specific days. But I think you'll very soon see the days mentioned for San Diego, because that's Claire's
well,
right.
San Diego has had specific days since November. It is. I mean, they haven't. At least by April, they hadn't fined anyone, even though they'd had these mandatory restrictions in effect since November.
And there's a court case that appears to block the use of the normal way you restrict the usage of a product, increased price. The court case out of San Juan Capistrano says, nope, you can't charge people more who use above a certain level. That's the usual way you restrict how many people buy SUVs or Cadillacs or something. You just make it expensive, and only a few people can afford that. But that doesn't seem to be a way we can get out of the water problem. We're not going to be able to have 1, 2, and 3, 4 tiers, so that if you're a real water guzzler, you're going to have to pay a lot more.
Well, it sounds
Good
like,
luck on
I mean,
that.
the city of San Diego is still going to be able to keep its tiered water. It has to be based, they have to show that it's related to the cost of delivery. So,
which it isn't.
Not going to make them pay through the hose. Let me ask you another thing here. The governor feels such urgency about this drought that he's resurrected this whole Delta Tunnel project here. Just briefly tell us, what is this thing, and why have we heard so much about it?
Well, it's a project that is several decades in the making. It would be twin tunnels that stretch from just south of Sacramento to Tracy. The idea is to ensure that Southern California gets a greater supply of water from, and a certain supply of water from the Sacramento River. Right now, that water, the Sacramento San Joaquin Bay Delta is a series of small islands with canals and sloughs. Right now, we get water from there, but it has to go by all these islands. It's a complicated process. Those tunnels would take the water directly and ensure a more secure supply for Southern California. Of course, the many family farmers on those little islands object to that. They worry about salt water from San Francisco Bay beginning to seep in. But I think that project shows the desperation that California is facing.
An environment
What it doesn't show is that the Northern Californians have changed their mind. I mean, this is the mother of all water disputes in California, north versus south. Every time it's tried, the northern folks just raise up at the idea of Southern California guzzling more of their water, and it gets defeated. It was an old issue the first time Jerry was governor, and it's back. Now he's trimming it down.
And we do have we got a bite on what he has to say about the naysayers here. Let's hear what the governor says on that.
I asked my water man sitting over here, how many man hours and woman hours go into the Delta project? What'd you tell me? 1 million. Okay, until you've put 1 million hours into it, shut up. Because you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
All right, and he, believe it or not, wasn't even finished with that, Tony. Let's hear what else he had to say. He was fired up.
But the point is, we got real issues. We got 38 million people. We got a gross domestic product of 2.2 trillion. We're the 7th largest economic entity in the world. And we have resources, and we have problems. And if these problems aren't handled, they get worse, and they don't go away. And if I don't handle this Delta project this time, I'll just have to come back and run for governor 40 years later, like I did this time.
All right, a few seconds left on this. Is it going to happen?
Paradigm is still there. In Northern California, they are dead set against it. The Sacramento Bee and the Chronicle in San Francisco, they'll be dead set against it. Southern California will be mixed. The environmentalists will say, no, 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 don't bring more water. It just encourages us to grow, grow, grow. That's foolish. So it'll be a split vote down here, a unanimous virtually in Northern California, and that's what has blocked this project for decades. And of course, the price tag, $15 billion, is also kind of a drawback.
All right, we're going to bring it back down to San Diego, and that fight, I'm sure, is going to continue, as you say. San Diegans are also struggling to use less water, although the San Diego County Water Authority says we are better off in some areas of the state. Claire, are people actually cutting back on their water use, and how much? We touched on that a little earlier with Chris.
Yeah, I mean, so over the past year they have, but if you go back to 2013, I think in the water authority across the county, water use is actually up 13%. So because the last few years were hot, dry years, people are using more water than they did a couple years ago.
And as we said at the outset, there really hasn't been a big push, the voluntary stuff and some slogans and PSAs here and there, but until lately, not really the big push locally.
You know, the irony of all this, and this came out of the meeting yesterday, is San Diego... The meeting of the San Diego County Water Authority. San Diego has done a lot to increase its supplies. The combination of the Carlsbad desalination plant coming online, the deals with the farmers in the Imperial Valley, means that we, in this difficult year, we will have 99% of what we need. We have to cut 25%, though, because of the state mandates. Where's that extra water going? It's going into the San Vicente Reservoir, where it will be if we need it in future dry years. So San Diego's in a pretty good shape.
Well, I want to get to Tony in a few minutes on that Imperial Valley thing and get into the reeds on that one. But this is a good spot to bring up. We also have this $3.5 billion wastewater treatment project okayed from the city council, and that's over 20 years. But what will that mean? A lot more potable water and recycling, right?
That's an incredible project. It actually was written up in Scientific American last year. San Diego's in the lead on this. The idea is to completely recycle the wastewater, not send it out to the ocean, but to use it again. And by 2030, we'd be getting something like a third of our water from that, equal, for example, to, I think, 4 Carlsbad desalination plants. That's really cutting-edge, high-tech approach to solving the water crisis. There's a bit of a yuck factor. Some people call it toilet to tap.
They do.
But, you know, it's what happens on a broad global scale with water anyway. We drink water that's gone down the toilet. It just happens to cycle through the atmosphere. So,
Claire, a huge drain on water, as most homeowners have lawns, and that figures largely into this drought here. And talk about what having thousands of lawns. You did a feature on this this week. What does that mean here in San Diego?
Well, so the city had a refurbished a rebate program in April. It had already run out of money. They said, we're going to put a bunch more money into it, and that money was gone within a week. There were apparently people waiting in the lobby of the Public Utilities Department, applications in hand the first day.
Want to tear out that lawn?
Yes, saying, you know, so you get $1.50 a square foot to take out your lawn, and people say it costs maybe a couple $1,000s, even if you're doing it yourself, to go through and do all of the redesign. So people really need that economic incentive to take out the lawn. I think we figured out that they said 550,000 square feet of lawn will be taken out in this most recent rebate, which, if you calculate, that's 33 Olympic swimming pools worth of water a year.
Okay, which is something, but not a ton, right, Tony?
Indeed. There are two wicked things now. We're looking at almonds. Somebody came out with a figure that says it's a gallon of water to grow 1 almond.
That's mind-boggling.
And then, of course, our lawns. But the fact is that the lawns in a state of 39 million people are a pretty small percentage of the use factor of our water. But it's one that we can actually handle. Other things we can't handle, or not without litigation. So when Jerry Brown says everybody's going to sacrifice, the answer is, well, no, they're not, Jerry. You've gone after the people that are easily gotten. Homeowners, suburbanites, people with lawns, people with toilets. And you can just go after them. People who use a lot more water, the answer is you can't, because of laws.
The city is definitely pushing this. Everyone do your part. There's always something everyone can do, where the director of the Public Utilities Department is saying, save the water that while you're waiting for your shower to warm up and use it to make pasta. I mean, that's the level that we're at.
The soapy pasta. Well, let me ask you on this score, a lot of folks don't own, they rent. And you happen to be a renter yourself. What, in your experience, tell us what renters, do you see your water bill? Or
no, I have no idea. We don't pay our water bill, no idea how much water we use whatsoever. Also don't have a lawn, so we can save water, but then what to do with that water, make pasta, I guess.
And you want to see the numbers, you want to see the payoff.
Well, that's why the numbers are kind of very misleading, to compare a place that has a lot of renters who have their apartments against the place that has enormous vegetation. The rich folks over in Rancho Santa Fe or Palm Springs or whatever. But yet we've created this idea that it's the problem of these rich people. That's the people who've really created this problem. And the answer is no. The rich get richer and the rest of us do not. But again, though, Jerry says we're all in this together, and the answer is no, we're not. No, some are, some aren't.
All right, well, one impact I want to get to is that on business. We had Eric Brevald of National University was on KPBS Evening Edition recently. He talked about the drought's effect on business. Let's hear about that.
If this is the new normal with the current level of restrictions, we can weather it, pardon the pun. But if we're starting to see restrictions that go well beyond what the governor proposed now, this could be really challenging for how businesses are going to have to adapt to a much drier Southern California.
So, Claire, what are some of the businesses who might have to take it in the shorts, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other area, and I hear a lot every time I do a story, basically, on how the city wants people to cut back their water use. People write to me and say, well, what about the hotels or the gyms, things, big businesses, what are they doing to cut back? I think that there is one of the city's restrictions is that hotels have to offer not to launder your towels every time they clean your room, but people can still do that. I don't know what level hotels are actually doing to cut back.
Well, and drinking water in restaurants, that's another drop in the bucket.
Say a business uses more water than we'd like them to use. Other than fining them, and again, that's legally questionable, what can you do? Can you turn off the water to a business? Good luck on that. Whenever that's tried with electricity, for example, because of failure of payment of bills, tragedy occurs, controversy occurs. So I just don't know, and particularly in a suburban situation, are you going to can you actually do it? Can you turn off the water to my neighbor because he's running it in the gutter? There may be some sort of defiance on this if people get the idea that suburbanites are being asked to sacrifice on others or not.
Chris, we'll give you the last word on this segment.
There's a real trade-off because the businesses are jobs. If it's agribusiness, it's our food supply. And I think what the Water Authority said at the meeting yesterday, what the chairman said was, this is an historic point in California, and ornamental lawns are the lowest priority. And so we may feel that we're having to take it as suburban homeowners, but in fact, it's probably more important that we have food to eat and that we have jobs.
Absolutely. All right. Well, water rights in California were contentious as far back as the late 1800s. Maybe they've always been contentious. It's a complicated issue fraught with legal and political peril. Tony, essentially, it's whoever made the first historic claim is the last one to get restricted. Am I right on that?
In large measure, and don't forget, in California, what they call developed water, agriculture uses about 80% and contributes 2, 3, 4% to the gross national or gross state product. Agriculture is not as big as it once was. We've gotten a lot bigger. But again, its rights, some in laws, some in agreements made with the federal government, go back a century, more than a century, when the idea was, my goodness, are we going to have enough food to feed ourselves? And there was a great panic about that, and those that were willing to grow food got priority. Now, of course, we grow a lot of food, and we export food from the Imperial Valley, rice to Japan, and pasta for Italy, for their wheat for their pasta. So we're an exporter, but yet they sit there. Imperial Valley, for example, those farmers have more water from the Colorado River than any other state. In fact, several states combined, and they have the water, and they've got it wrapped up with laws. Now, in some areas, the lower San Joaquin, for example, they have not rights, but they've got a contract with the state and the federal government. And so when things go dry, they do get cut, and they are hurting. Now, north of Sacramento, it's still pretty wet, despite those scary pictures about Lake Oroville. So, bottom line, We can go after Rancho Santa Fe and their lush lawns, or we can go after the suburbanites, but it's the farmers, Imperial Valley, Central Valley, Northern California.
The 800-pound gorilla.
They are, and Jerry Brown is unwilling to go after them. It looked like he was going to go after, inadvertently, our farmers here in San Diego County and Bonsall and Valley Center and such, but once they tweak the numbers, they're going to take maybe a 15% cut, or be asked to, as opposed to a 35%. So farmers are still, compared to some others, doing really well.
Well, let's talk quickly about that deal with the Imperial Valley and the city of San Diego. What happens in 2017?
Well, there's all sorts of off-roads, off-ramps on that. And one of them is that if the ongoing problem of the Salton Sea, and the Salton Sea is the Broadway stage, always dying, never dead, right?
Biggest lake in California.
Biggest, stinkiest lake in the western United States.
And California's original ecological disaster.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
But it has no constituency worth a darn. Lots of people care. In fact, the governor talks about 1 billion hours having to do with the San Joaquin, Sacramento Delta. Not so the Salton Sea. After 2017, the agreement that was made between Imperial and San Diego, part of it goes away in terms of keeping water in the Salton Sea. Now, if it shrinks, water is no longer going in as large amount to the Salton Sea, it shrinks. The dirty sea bottom with all that stinky salinity and all that,
minerals
all those
and salt and all that stuff,
hits the air, and it worsens the terrible asthma problems in those communities, and it also drifts to the coast. So we're all going to smell the Salton Sea if something is not done about it. I asked the governor during the campaign on the water bond, what about the Salton Sea, Governor? Oh, we'll deal with that later. So he hasn't weighed in on it. He's still on his tunnels.
And
it's the Salton Sea is here.
And it's billions more for that project, too.
Oh, at one point the state had an idea, hey, let's do this, that, and the other, $9 billion. That was dead on arrival. Yeah. And there was no money specifically in that big water bond that was passed for the Salton Sea. There's some money they can compete for, but nothing close to what will have to happen. And the Imperial Valley farmers, having a lot of seller's remorse, really would like to cancel that deal with San Diego. San Diego will soon be getting 20% of its water from the Imperial Valley. They don't want to cancel that deal, nor do they want to solve the problem of the Salton Sea.
I do want to swing back to agriculture in San Diego County. Now, we had Eric Larson, director of the Farm Bureau, in here telling Evening Edition last week how agriculture here has already been affected. Let's hear that.
A lot of acreage has gone out of production due to that high price of water, especially the tree fruit growers. The trees in the ground, you got to keep it wet, and prices have not risen commensurate with the increase in the price of water. So we estimate about 10,000 acres of avocados are now idle. When I say idle, the trees are dead. Idle sounds too soft. The growers have actually turned the water off on those trees and abandoned those groves.
All right, a lot more cuts in agriculture?
Indeed, now there's competition is a factor there too. We're getting avocados from places we never used to, so that's part of it. But indeed, Eric Larson from Farm Bureau is correct. They've already suffered, if you will. Their water deal still protects them better than a lot of folks, but not enough. And again, it's a $1 billion industry, $1 billion plus, give or take. It's surprising we don't see it so much because it's cut flowers and it's avocados and it's citrus, and it's the strawberries of Encinitas and the flower fields of Carlsbad. We don't it isn't in downtown San Diego, for example, but it's out there. Doesn't contribute a lot in terms of employment. It just doesn't, but it throws a lot of money into the economy, and it has been hurt through the drought and the shifting farm market and stands to be hurt more.
Short time we have left. I did want to shift gears and ask about desalination. Got that big plant coming online in Carlsbad you mentioned earlier, Chris. Going to see a bunch more plants up and down the coast, or no?
A week ago, the State Water Resources Board voted to streamline the regulations on new plants. You know, the Carlsbad plant was fought by Coastkeeper and other environmental groups. With these new state regulations, it might be easier to get a new one online. There's one under consideration for Huntington Beach. There's a mothballed plant in Santa Barbara that is being brought back online. This is not a crazy idea. Israel gets 40% of its water from desalination, and you know there's a lot of water in the Pacific Ocean that would help California for decades to come.
But this is really expensive.
San Diego's already talking to the Department of Defense about, hey, how about a plant at Camp Pendleton? But we're still talking a decade 2 decades.
And it's real expensive water.
Very expensive.
Yes.
And the environmentalists will fight. There were 14 lawsuits that had to be cleared away before the Carlsbad plant, and they're not waving the white flag. The environmentalists still don't like desal. The slow growthers don't like desal. So anytime you try one, figure on litigation, figure on political turmoil.
All right, a few seconds left. We did have a story in your paper, and the KPBS did, on 12 million trees hurting, of course, from the drought. One last quick question here for everybody. Do we need to limit growth here? 38 million people, too many, not enough water?
Well, one of my colleagues keeps campaigning that we have to be able to tell farmers what they can grow and what they can't. Never going to happen. The slow growthers are out, and they're using water as an issue with the Environmental Quality Act, but I don't think that's going to occur.
But you know, we can't stop growth. Most of the growth is coming from our kids growing up and having kids.
Well, we're going to have to stop the discussion, but I appreciate it. We'll be more on this, I'm sure. That does wrap up another week of stories in the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, Chris Genuine of the San Diego Times, the Times of San Diego.com, Tony Perry of the Los Angeles Times, and Claire Tregeser of KPBS News. Reminder, all the drought stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.